Russian and Chinese diplomats this week spent time discussing ways to enhance their economic links, with Moscow trying to escape the effects of Western sanctions. Russia is seeking more buyers for its energy resources, including oil and gas. China, meanwhile, has the manufacturing capacity that Russia needs to replace its connection to Western markets, now closed because of Russian President Vladimir Putin's decision to attack Ukraine last year. But analysts say that the relationship is not equal and China holds more leverage in negotiations. Creating an integrated market between the two Eurasian giants will also take billions of dollars in infrastructure investment, which Russia may have trouble affording. Let's get more on this now with Anton Fedyashin in Washington, D.C. He's a professor of history at American University with a focus on Russia and Central Asian studies. Really good to have you with us, Professor. Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin says that sensational pressure from the West is taking Russia-China ties to an unprecedented high. But in your view, who stands to gain more from this deepening relationship?
Well, the way it's developing so far, both countries stand to gain because they are now becoming closer to each other than either of them has ties with Washington. This is a very interesting reversal of what Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon, of course, organized in the early 1970s during the opening to China, where that policy brought Washington closer to Beijing and to Moscow than they were to each other. And we're seeing that recalibration unraveling today. China is certainly demographically bigger and economically stronger, but China also needs Russian resources because the Chinese seem to be thinking ahead in terms of the possibility of a Western naval blockade. And if they have 11 time zones worth of Russian resources and Russian industrial capacity on their side, they can withstand a standoff with the West if it should come to that.
Yes, and as we know, China has an insatiable appetite for the world's resources right now. And China last year became Russia's top energy customer as Moscow's gas exports to the West dwindled under Western sanctions. So can closer economic ties between Beijing and Moscow really make up for the loss in markets, in Western markets, that were caused by the sanctions in the wake of the war in Ukraine?
They probably will, as long as they are part of a broader Eurasian integration. And I think it's very important to discuss the Sino-Russian rapprochement, this turn towards each other right now, in the broader context of Eurasia and Eurasian integration, which both sides are working steadily and fairly successfully so far towards. Mishustin's recent visit to China that we started with is part of a much broader phenomenon. The meeting in Xi'an in eastern China, Western China, sorry, between the Chinese government and Central Asian economies, the creation of a north-south corridor by the Russians and the Iranians. By the way, the head of the Russian Central Bank, Elvira Nabiullina, is in Iran right now. Dmitry Medvedev, former Russian president, is in Laos and Vietnam. The Chinese and the Russians are not going it alone. They're actually integrating the Eurasian space. And part of this process is bringing the whole global South into this sort of parallel global integrated structure. So remember those famous words that President Xi uttered to President Putin after their meeting in Moscow a couple of months ago, that they are making decisions that will change the world unlike anything else over the past 100 years. He may have been referring precisely to this.